Let's call this task force meeting on electronic recording of official documents by county clerks to order. First order of business is a roll call. Madam Secretary.
Senator McGarvey.
Here, I'm sorry, I should say here from the district.
Thank you. Senator West. Representative Hatton. Representative Reed.
Here in the room.
Thank you. Don Blevins.
Here.
Thank you. Debbie Donnelly. Brent Isley. Russell Ford.
Here.
Thank you. Brandon Gross.
Brent Isley's here. I just unmuted myself. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark Ladd.
Present online.
Thank you. Darcy Mayer. John McGarvey. Stephanie Schumacher. Deborah Stamper. Gabrielle Summey. Pam Thompson. Barry Tumler. Tim Vaughn. Michael Wilson. Chairman Adams. Chairman Fisher.
Here in the room. Okay. Since we are short of a quorum at the present time, we'll skip item 2 on the agenda, the approval of the minutes, and move directly to our presenters today under the implementation of e-recording systems. First up is Mark Ladd, the VP of Regulatory and Industry Affairs for Simplified. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm going to yield to Gino to do his presentation first. He and I had a little discussion before the session, so I think we'll have Gino go first and then I'll follow up, if that's okay.
That's fine. Gino, please proceed.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairman and members of the task force. I appreciate you allowing me to come back again and talk to you about my favorite topic. And so I do really appreciate it. I know that everybody has a lot going on right now and with elections and everything. So this topic is super important to all of us and in the mortgage industry and also in other industries. So where I'm going to spend my time today is much surrounding how important it is in the movement we've seen. So remote online notarization, as you all know, and we all spent a lot of time in a room discussing remote online notarization a few years ago, and finally it got passed in the Commonwealth. It was a big deal, and it definitely, I think, really helped to prepare us for COVID. And so that's where I'm going to spend my allotted time here. Hold on, I'm going to share my screen. I've got a presentation here. And so, so we saw in pre-COVID that there were a number of states that had passed remote online notarization, and saw about 22 states that had RON laws on the books. About 15 were ready to do business, 7 were waiting to go live. Going into 2020, I think we were all on thinking that, you know, things were getting, e-recording was get adopted, e-closings were somewhat new to the industry, and there wasn't a full adoption, or, you know, remote notarizations were not being fully utilized in all ways, shapes, and forms. And so I think the industry was taking it really slow, each step at a time. And then obviously COVID hit, and kind of where we're at now, everybody looked overnight to find a solution to be able to notarize documents electronically or submit documents electronically to be recorded, because in-person interactions were not allowed or very limited, and there was a lot of danger, and still it can be in those settings. And so you saw a lot of activity from starting on what I would say March 6th, when the world kind of took a different direction. You saw a lot of states, governors come out and release executive orders to allow some form of remote ink notarization or remote online notarization, or allowed some variation of the two. And so you saw definitely some movement there to create more of this digital experience to allow protections to clients and any parties in that transaction. And so we saw 27 states get RON laws on the books, 24 were ready and live right now to do business, and then 2 states were kind of in the regulatory framework. And so we see this momentum carrying into next year. And I'll just highlight a few things, is that we see a lot of states that are very big into this movement coming on stage next year. And actually, Pennsylvania just is about to pass their RON laws. And so why this is important, and why I'm spending my time here is COVID has really brought front and center the impact and the need for a digital experience or digital recordings. Because when COVID hit, many of us in the mortgage industry were very afraid that we couldn't close loans. We had people that were sitting in moving trucks. We had folks that needed to save money because of financial hardships. We had families that were left homeless. And so we had to figure out ways to continue to close those loans to help Americans and citizens in Kentucky to still be able to take advantage of those things. And so I think it's very important that this is where the digital experience really could fit that need. And so we worked with many clerks across the nation to make sure that they were essential employees, to make sure that they could still close those loans. This, I think, really brought to the main stage to the rest of the folks and constituents out there that there was a need for a digital constituent option. And COVID has really, impacted the remote online notarization world, and in an effort to really bring it to main stage, I think a lot more lenders are going to be, or other industries are going to be utilizing this a lot more. So I think this further expands the importance of why moving into the digital recording space becomes more important as we move forward. RON, again, is not just RON. We need all the other parts to make it happen. And without all those other parts, we really, with RON by itself, it's not as powerful. And it's moved into not how we do RON, but it's not how, or not to do RON or e-recording or e-closing. It's really, but how can we do it? And so I think that's important. And I didn't want to spend too much time on RON, but I wanted to give a highlight because I know Mark is the expert here, and give him the time. But it's really going to be a game changer once there is more e-recording options out there. It's a better constituent option. It's a better industry option. It creates many efficiencies for all of us involved, and it's not just the lenders that benefit. It's everybody that benefits from this process. So I know that this is a really quick presentation, but I wanted to just highlight how important it can be, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gino. I do have a question here.
Sure.
Obviously, the coronavirus has accelerated the need for every form of e-commerce, whether it's real estate, banking, lending, car sales. Everything is done digitally these days, and needs to be done digitally. Is there anything, I saw your map, there were some green states up there that you indicated were in the forefront, I believe, of moving this digital transaction economy forward. Do you have some thoughts and some ideas for legislation in Kentucky that might enhance or improve or expedite our movement to a more digitally based transaction economy?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the focus has been to help the counties that are adopting e-reporting to become part of that. I think that's the focus. I think each, like I mentioned earlier, is that each part of this puzzle really makes everything work in harmony. Because if we just have Ron that stands alone and then there's not this e-reporting option, what happens is we move into that papering out option, which becomes burdensome and isn't really efficient. While it's a great option for those folks who can't necessarily record or digitally, that there is an option for them to do papering out, but it takes away from the entire experience. And so I think, if we can work in a way that's not a mandate necessarily, but a partnership and moving forward to where we can help foster the ability to do more e-reporting and bring on more counties, I think that you are going to see more folks move into this digital space. I think that's been a hurdle for I can only speak again for the mortgage industry. But if you don't change the way that we do business, most people are just going to continue to do the same thing. And I think there's an opportunity to create efficiencies in our industry. And working with the clerks and other members of this task force, I think that a lot of folks would see a lot of wins in their daily lives because of this e-reporting. I hope that answers your question.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Gino. Do members have any other questions for Gino? Seeing no hands raised, I guess we'll call on Mark to give his presentation. Mark Ladd, are you there?
I am. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And so today I wanted to talk about basically two topics, because I think that there were two items that were exposed by the pandemic, one of which goes, I think, oftentimes unnoticed or at least underemphasized. And the two items are recording of documents, but the second item is the searching of already recorded documents in the courthouse. It's obviously very, very important to be able to get these transactions on record, but in order to produce the mortgage, in order to manufacture the loan, we need access to the documents that are already recorded. And that's one of the things that I think oftentimes has been underestimated or undervalued here. So I'm going to want to talk a little bit about both of those items today. I provided to the committee, and I'll share this here. Whoops. My computer is not cooperating on the sharing, but there is a chart in the committee materials regarding the states that adopted ERPERA. And so this is not a chart that represents all of the states that are e-recording. This chart represents the states that adopted ERPERA and then proceeded with e-recording. So very similar path that the state of Kentucky has taken there. And and these numbers are from the PREA website, the Property Records Industry Association, and the states that are highlighted in green on the chart are the states that have gotten to the point where all 100% of the counties in that particular state have adopted some form of e-recording. And the thing that I would note about that for clarity and full disclosure is that the states that have an asterisk by them, District of Columbia, okay, not a state, but a territory, a district within the United States, Hawaii, Maryland, and Alaska. So 3 of the states that have achieved 100% participation in e-recording. are states that have essentially one recording office. Hawaii has offices on all of the islands, but they all feed into one single recording office. Same thing in Alaska. There are 20 different recording districts in Alaska. I'm sorry, 30 some districts in Alaska, but they all feed into one system, similar in Maryland. So while you can look at those and say that 100% of the counties there are e-recording, they really only had to automate one office. So just want to make that contrast so that as we consider what's the right path forward for Kentucky, that we compare Kentucky's 120 counties, not to Maryland's 24 counties or 34 counties, because they really only had to automate one in order to get there. So that's just a little caveat there. And then the other part of this, I think, is instructional, is that the earliest adopters of URPERA, the Uniform Real Property Electronic Recording Act, still have significant ways to go before all of their counties will be electronically recording. So there's not a real, sort of a magic formula for moving some of this forward. States that have had broad adoption and are interestingly enough, a couple of the states with that broad adoption, like Colorado, didn't do it pursuant to the Uniform Real Property Electronic Recording Act. You can see Colorado's not even on this list. They never adopted URPERA, but they moved forward with e-recording under UEDA. And they had a Secretary of State that was very, very interested in moving the needle forward on this. And they got to 100% e-recording. But again, there are some unique things in Colorado that drove that, the way that their trustee form of mortgage, processing happens. The public trustee there kind of drove them to a statewide program. So I think you just have to keep all of those things in mind as we think about how quickly can we move the state toward electronic recording. On the other hand, I'll brag a little bit about my home state of Wisconsin, where Wisconsin moved relatively quickly. When I was the Register of Deeds in Racine County, we've started e-recording before the adoption of URPERA. Again, we started e-recording on the basis of UEDA alone, but then the state came along in 2006, adopted URPERA, and it was only a few years later that the entire state was adopting. Again, there was a technology fund that was available in Wisconsin, a segregated fund that was part of the recording fee, that the recorders had the opportunity to save up the monies to make sure that they could upgrade their systems to be ready for e-recording. And so there was a funding mechanism there available. And so some of those factors go into how quickly you may see a state adopt e-recording and have large percentage of their counties electronically recording. So that's one aspect of the equation, is the ability for counties to start e-recording, and how quickly can we expect counties to start e-recording. And we're already seeing, a number of counties in the state of Kentucky have already adopted. I know that I checked with our county integrations team yesterday, and there are at least a half a dozen more counties that are in the process that we're aware of. So it's looking like it's taking a normal progression, what we normally typically see as states adopt enabling legislation there. So then the other issue becomes the ability to search documents. And while our company does not directly get involved with converting records from a non-digital format, whether that's paper or microfilm, to a digital format, as the past president of the Property Records Industry Association, I was able to make a couple of calls to some friends who do work in that space. And they tell me that, again, depending on the mix of microfilm and books and how many years worth of records need to be converted, and obviously the size of the county, that will impact how long one of these backfile conversions will take. But they estimate that most of the projects that they see run anywhere from 6 months to a year, and that it may take 1 or 2, projects, but could be a year to 2 years worth of conversion time to actually, convert a county's records so that they're available online and of value to the searching, community, in that there are enough records available to search that go back far enough in time. So that I don't have I don't have so much cost estimates on, because again, that varies widely, and I didn't want to commit any of the other vendors to any kind of a price range, but they were all in that, 6 months to 2 year kind of time frame, depending on the size and number of records available in the county. So I think those are two things that we need to think about as we go forward, is how quickly can counties come on board? And it seems like the Kentucky counties are embracing the adoption of e-recording at a pretty typical pace. But then also, how do we get the records that are not currently in an electronic format into an electronic format so that they can be searched in the case that the courthouse is not available? And by the way, we all are thinking about pandemics, right now, because that's what's impacting us directly. But there are other things that could cause a courthouse to be closed and not available, for the records to be searched. Where we learn that in places like Louisiana when hurricanes come through, or other places. Grand Forks, North Dakota, several years ago had a river, flood. Lynn County, Iowa, it was actually a lake in Wisconsin that broke loose from its banks and flooded, the river, and the impact was felt a state away and flooded the first 2 floors of the courthouse in Lynn County. So, not just, global pandemics, but other natural disasters could cause a courthouse to not be available for searching of the records. I just think that's the other aspect of this that we need to think about. So those were some of the things that I wanted to, provide, and again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Interesting presentation. Any members have a question for Mark? Mark, you were talking about digitizing existing title records. And you saying Wisconsin does have that capability? All counties have that capability?
No, a number of counties have done that in Wisconsin. And again, because they have a technology fund available to them, it's actually called a Land Records Modernization Fund, so that it covers a broad spectrum of technologies. So a number of counties have taken advantage of that, but not all. I'm not aware of any state where all of the counties have converted their tangible records to digital records yet. There are individual counties that have, but I'm not aware of any state that has full coverage on that.
Is that a fee on? Is that an extra, that fund established with an extra fee on recording documents?
Right. The way that the model that Wisconsin used was to establish a fund, a charge that was added into the recording fee. And so if you're presenting a document to be recorded, the fee is $35 in the state of Wisconsin. And once you pay that fee, then, by statute, the recorder sets aside, I believe, it was $2 or $3 of that fee that goes into the fund in the county that the county recorder retains and has control over for these types of land record modernization expenses. But then there's also a portion that goes into a common fund. It's a smaller amount, it's a dollar from each of those documents. It goes into a smaller fund that is administered. There was that the large counties that have a large volume could help smaller counties that didn't have as large a volume and share the wealth a little bit. So out of that common fund, there are grants given, and they're available to all of the counties, but the focus was on providing those funds to smaller counties that didn't have the resources of, say, a Milwaukee County or a Racine County that had larger recording volumes. So again, it just appears as the recording fee is $35, and then the accounting for those funds, that happens invisible to the consumer who's actually paying the recording fee.
Okay, I believe as part of Senate Bill 114, we did include some extra fees, at least for the digitation for new filing, e-recording of new filings. I don't think we included any part of that for actually digitizing existing records. So that would be a concern for us going forward.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, Don Blevins.
Hey, Don.
May I help you out a little?
Certainly.
We did in fact add a certain fee dedicated to just this topic as a part of Senate Bill 114. It's called the document storage fee. And it's $10 for every permanent document that goes into a county clerk's office is dedicated just to this problem. So that fee went into effect on January the 1st, as you know. And just as one example, my office needs about $300,000 just for the software conversion to go to electronic document recording. We're probably close to there. And under normal circumstances, I would have already issued an RFP and we wouldn't be having this conversation. However, COVID has kind of sidetracked us, and my brain has been on nothing but elections since basically April. And so I think that's true of every county clerk across the state. I'd like to also add that we had a few early adopters in the state, like Debbie Donnelly, who's on the call if you all have questions for how it's actually going. That's super important because those early adopters will give a sense of comfort to the smaller counties in particular, who, believe it or not, are already ready to do this. Their software can do it. It's literally flip a switch, and they can start doing electronic document recording. In those counties, the challenge is what Mark was referencing, and that is going back in time and scanning the older documents to bring up to date, your entire document database, if you want to think of it that way. And COVID has dramatically exposed the weak side of Kentucky in this particular regard because many of our documents are not available online for this very reason. So that's another application of that same fee. In addition, from years ago, we created a smaller fund with $1 per document, I believe it is, that goes to KDLA, the Kentucky Department of Library and Archives, for which they administer a grant program. Now that's meant for more like you got to replace some book binders or you need to replace some shelving and those kinds. It's relatively small grants, but they really help the smaller counties offset, a $20,000 purchase of shelving or something like that. And so now the document storage fee from Senate Bill 114 can be used for these technology upgrades. You had asked earlier, I promise I'll shut up in a second. You had asked earlier about some legislative changes that might be necessary. Here's a couple of things we've uncovered this year that you might be interested in. The first one is in smaller counties, they have to return what are called excess fees at the end of every calendar year. If we tried to write Senate Bill 114 so that this fee was exempt, and certain fiscal courts are arguing with certain county clerks. So I'll just say that it's difficult to build up a capital reserve to do a big document scanning project when you have to get rid of the money every year. So that's something that the legislature might want to take a look at. The second thing is the ongoing nagging problem of fee pooling. This is where fiscal court, in some cases, willingly joins, the county clerk willingly joins, and they pool all their funds together. And then in other cases, fiscal courts have aggressively forced a clerk to join them in fee pooling. As you know, fiscal courts are facing the same revenue challenge everybody is, and now that document storage fee is very tasty. So they're trying to take the money from the clerk. So language to the effect of saying, no, this is special. We're going to reserve that fund in a special fund that can span, say, 4 years of the term of the clerk. Then you've got something to work with. Now, the larger counties, the ones that are over 70,000, we're fine because we only return our excess fees every 4 years anyway. It's the much smaller ones that are in these two particular situations. So thank you for letting me ramble on. I just wanted to clear up kind of where we are. I think we're poised in great shape, honestly. If it hadn't been for COVID, we would have seen a lot more rollout this year. The County Clerks Association hasn't been able to meet in person for months, and that's where a lot of these offhand conversations occur where Debbie can say to other people, hey, it's working great. It makes my office run great. You should try it. Those conversations are invaluable for spreading this around the state. Thank you for letting me speak.
All right, thank you, Don. Quick question for you. You say that your fee pooling only occurs every 4 years in Fayette. Does it occur every year in some other counties?
Right. So there's two different concepts here. The one you're referring to now is called excess fees. So a county clerk in a below 70,000 population county must return any fees that they have left over from the end of the calendar year to the fiscal court for the fiscal court to use.
And that
This is always a
and that
Go ahead.
includes this particular fee as well?
right.
Okay.
That's the argument people are having.
All
Now,
right.
fee pooling is where they all mix their money together in an accounting sense. And so the county clerk's money just goes directly into the fiscal court's purse, and then the county clerk just gets to draw down, whatever expenses the fiscal court feels necessary to give them.
Okay, well, are there any other questions from members? What I'm proposing to the members for the next meeting is that we kind of get together our ideas for new legislation, or just a report to the legislature of what needs to be tweaked in this statute for the next legislative session. That might include money for digitizing existing records, or not allowing some of this pooling or return of excess funds. Things like that are great ideas for legislation. So I would invite the clerks to submit some ideas for tweaking this legislation going forward. I would invite the title insurance companies, if they would like to see especially digitizing existing deeds and land records. I think that would make their job a lot easier going forward. The bankers and the Secretary of State's office, I believe, mentioned something in our last meeting about the things we might need to memorialize in statute that might already be in regulations. So that will be our meeting next time, so we can prepare a report for our next legislative session. If there are any other business to go before the committee, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Oh, wait a second, not adjourned. Oh, let's do a final roll call of anybody who is not ready.
Let's see, Senator West, Representative Hatton, Brandon Gross, Darcy Mayer, John McGarvey, Stephanie Schumacher, Deborah Stamper, Gabrielle Summey, Pam Thompson, Barry Tumler.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Tim Vaughn,
Thank you.
Michael Wilson, Chairman Adams.
All right. Well, my initial motion to adjourn stands. We are adjourned.